Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to GST Colloquium, 4 Dimensions of 4 Years Journey. Uh, Today, we stand on eve of 4th anniversary of GST, and 4 years is a sufficiently long period to assess and step back whether a reform or a law or a tax law like GST, how successful or how big a failure it has been. So, you have been attending many GST related webinars organized by us or other professionals or other trade associations, but most of these webinars are conducted by experts and professionals. So this time we thought that as tax experts, we are still outsiders only. It is industry who enjoys fruits of a simple law or bears a brand if it is complex. So we have turned the table this side and have brought this event for you. And we are very happy that similar to our earlier webinars, etc., we have got a very encouraging response in terms of participation. So here we are with India's who's who leading CFOs and tax heads of large companies, some leading practitioners who will be sharing their uh, experience of last 4 years of GST as to whether GST actually proved to be a good and simple tax or not. So in this session, you'll be hearing more from the panelists and primarily industry experts only, and will only be a catalyst to ignite the discussions. So as a run up to this event, we conducted a number of polls last week on social media on key issues which are coming up in GST. We have got a very good response and will be sharing poll results as part of these discussions. We launched a essay writing competition amongst India's leading law schools on complex GST issues, constitutional challenges which have come up. So we'll be sharing the result on last day of our session. And today we'll be formally launching a book which has been written by our firm, which is Jurisprudence under GST law. So here we are with our first session, which is Journey of GST Recap to Precap. So in today's discussion, we'll very briefly cover pre-GST regime and what were expectations when GST was coming. And then we come to the core topics of teething issues faced by us, what has been the reality, and what suggestions our panelists have to make it good and simple. So we have a very esteemed panel today, and we are thankful to each of the panelists. We have Mr. Tarun Gulati, who is a renowned senior advocate with almost 30 years of experience. He has a tremendous experience in handling tax litigations and specifically indirect tax related. So many of the constitutional challenges under GST are being handled by him. We have Mr. Bimal Jain, who does not need any introduction. He's a chairman, Indirect Tax Committee, PhD Chambers, and a very eminent speaker on GST related issues. We have Mr. D.D. Goyal, Executive Advisor, Finance, Maruti Suzuki, again having significant experience in indirect tax laws, has represented industry issues many times before the government, and many of the amendments and clarifications goes to his credit under these laws. We have Mr. Sant Kumar Verma, again a renowned industry expert. Presently, he's a CFO of Luminous Power Technologies, and he has headed tax functions of leading corporates of India. So all the panelists today have significant experience from Inspector Raj excise days to introduction of service tax, VAT, and now GST. So they come with a lot of experience, and my colleague Dharnendra Kumar Rana, he'll be moderating the session. So before I hand over the baton to Dharnendra, our tomorrow session will be burning issues on taxability. followed by a Thursday session on disputes on input tax credit. And we'll wind up with ease in compliances and role of technology on Friday. So with this, I hand over the session to Dharnendra, who will take it forward from here.
Thank you, Puneet, for setting the context and for introduction. So I warmly welcome our eminent panelists and all the attendees who have taken out time for this event. Uh, just to before I begin, I'll also mention that during the registration process, we have received certain questions from the attendees, which is spread over different issues and topics. So the questions which are relevant for today's session, those we will take up in the question answer round today. Those which pertain to other sessions, those will be taken on those days. If any attendee wishes to put any question, they can put it in the chat box, or during question answer round, they can directly raise their hand and ask their question. If the question pertains to any particular panelist, we will ask from that panelist. Otherwise, we will generally ask from whichever panelist it is appropriate to ask. So with that, we begin. So we'll just give an overview of what the previous regime was, erstwhile regime. We all know that there were multiple taxes, from excise, service tax, CST. On the central side, we had VAT, entry tax, state side, then some local taxes like octroi, entertainment tax. There were numerous cesses, and most of these, some of these were not, credit of these were not available. There was no cross fungibility. There was no uniformity in law, procedure, or compliances. And always, there was blocking of credits and cascading effect. So all these led to a lot of new, interpretative issues, and which resulted into litigation. So the erstwhile regime was fraught with litigation, and we had seen the so many issues coming up. Now with these challenges, what was thought was that probably GST, which was a new regime, would take care of these. So with that, we'll first see what the we rolled out a poll, as Puneet mentioned. And so our poll, next slide, please. So the poll was whether or not do you foresee reduction in litigation under the GST regime? That was the poll question. And a lot of participation we saw. And if we see the results are before you, so almost 15% of the respondents said that yes, they see reduction in litigation, whereas 8% of the respondents, so almost 1/12, did not have any clue. They said maybe it can reduce, it may not reduce. But the substantial number, more than 3/4, 77% of the respondents felt that no, GST is not going to reduce litigation, it can increase the litigation. So with that, we come to, so GST has come in. What were the expectations from GST? Let us see what expectations industry had from GST. Of course, one nation, one tax, seamless flow of credits, certainty of tax positions, simplified compliances. I mean, when GST came in from July 1, 2017, taxpayers, industry, everybody wholeheartedly welcomed it. But whether or not the situation was same, we'll discuss all that with our eminent panelists. So with this, I will start my question answer round with our panelists. So my first question to you, Goyal Sahab, is that we just discussed the expectations from GST, one nation, one tax, and simplified compliances, seamless flow of credits, certainty of positions, tax positions, etc. Do you think there were any other expectations that industry had from the government apart from these? And did GST actually meet the expectations that the industry had?
Rana Sahab, yes. To me, the GST or overall design of GST has met a lot of expectation of the manufacturing industry. Let me talk about the manufacturing industry. Yes, there were some more expectations, or let me put in reverse order. there were many points which we never imagined that GST would create this new obstacle or procedural difficulties. Those has been introduced. But as far as the meeting of expectation, just for sake of time, two very major expectations which has been met by GST is there is a single tax rate on one product irrespective of the state in which is getting sold. Particularly in the motor vehicle industry, like in NCR, if UP has on the motor car 15% and Delhi has 12% and Haryana has 13%, for marketing person it was a nightmare. GST has till now, with a small exception of Kerala, same product, it's the same tax everywhere. So that has been met. The second expectation was the tax burden, ultimate tax burden should be uniform, irrespective of method of distribution, whether you make a direct sale, whether you have a stockyard sale, whether you have a C-form sale. Earlier, in each method, there was a different tax. Luckily now under GST, it's a single tax burden, whether you have a depot or whether you have a direct sale, whether it's a goods move to the consumer with 10 time of transaction or direct sale. So these are the two major expectations which have been met. Some procedural headaches are there. With that, I will conclude my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. It was really enlightening for us professionals, and really it helps. So my next question on this aspect is to you, Mr. Verma, is that do you feel, I mean, you see, we have seen there are certain clarity which lacks in the GST law also. Do you feel that these result into uncertainty in taking business decisions, or you feel that no business decisions, I mean, these points are not so alarming and business decisions are easy to take under GST law, unlike erstwhile law?
Thank you, Dharnendra. I think broadly, I agree with Mr. Goyal, his observations. Holistically, if you look at it, from multiplicity of taxes, 14, 15 taxes on one side, which were applicable to most of the manufacturers, to a single tax, harmonized law, harmonized rate structure. I think overall, I see substantial benefit for trade and industry. The other yardstick is expectation versus what you have got on the table right now. So maybe we had slightly different expectations, higher expectations, not unreasonable, I would say. And some of those we can discuss as we go along in this discussion. But very broadly, if I summarize, the decision on pricing, so business, which are the decision pockets for business? Decision on pricing, decision on go-to-market, decision on supply chain. I think all of this, there is enough for us to simplify our lives. We used to have DCs in multiple places because you had this great law called CST. And you chase C form, F form, E1, E2, nightmare, huh? Nonsense, if you ask me. So much of wastage of national resources. We were lashed with these archaic laws which no country did not deserve for a long, long time. So I recall, I think, when I joined Schneider, we had a team of almost 60, 70 just indirect tax guys, excluding the customs guys. And on the introduction of GST 2 years down the line, we are left with just 30. Less than half of manpower. So at the end of the day, it's a transaction tax. So if you complicate the transaction, if you complicate the touch points on taxes, if you have multiple taxes on the same transaction, central excise or tax on production, tax on sale, tax on entry, tax, you have octroi, you have many more things. I think that itself is a massive, massive relief. So that's the way I very broadly look at it. As I said, I think simplification on pricing, simplification on your go-to-market, supply chain, etc. In my Luminous pieces we had, as we speak, we are just left with 20, and they are just needed for business purpose. You don't need it for stock transfer, for tax optimization. That's not needed. I think nobody creates business model for optimization anymore now, tax optimization anymore. That itself is the biggest relief. So these are my broad comments. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Both the industry panelists, we see that, they are in cohesion. Let's see from our professional experts. So question to you, Mr. Jain, is that, you've seen the expectations from GST. Is the legal framework in GST capable of meeting with those expectations? Do you think that?
At the outset, if you look at legal framework, yes, we started with a big bang positive note. One nation, one tax. Multiplicity will go away. There will not be double taxation. Cascading will not be there. But after 4 years of journey, I'm still finding legal framework is not suiting to the business need. Start with the term supply. What is a taxable event in GST supply? Am I right? Look at the fate of term manufacture, which was defined under Section 2, subsection F of Central Excise Act. 70 years, still we are fighting on term manufacture. The way the term supply is being defined in GST law is once again going to be 100 years of practice. First of all, it is subjective definition and then inclusive. Taxable event need to be very crystal clear. It must start what it means, then inclusive. So first subjectivity. You've shown some results that 77% of population saying litigation will go up in GST. Why it will go up in GST? What is the reason for that? For simple reason, the taxable event supply term is not properly defined, and then you come back with a retrospective amendment. Section 7, subsection 1, subclause AA. Services by club to its members, retrospectively to Dunaway Calcutta Club Supreme Court judgment. It is not, this legal framework should be conducive to the business need. Coming to the third, I'm just broadening those topic and pointers. GST is a destination-based consumption tax, right? Today, you must be knowing intermediary, GST applicability on intermediary. Recently in Bombay High Court, 2 members of division bench contradicting each other. And rightly so, if GST is a destination-based consumption tax, and that is the basis, this tax got introduced in the country, why then the intermediary would be chargeable to GST? He's providing services to a foreign client outside India. So ultimately it is being used and consumed by a recipient outside India. Why place of supply will create a confusion and the litigation. Going down further, I'm just broadening 1 or 2 more points, then I will leave it to the panelists to take it further. In GST, there are certain schedules. Schedule 1, deemed supply. Schedule 2, used only for the classification, either as a supply of goods or supply of services. And third, neither a supply of goods nor supply of services. 3, transaction. High sea sale, merchant trading outside the country, and inbound sale. It got included in Schedule 3 from 1st of February 2019, but litigation, department is issuing so-called notices prior to that period, which is not chargeable to tax. So why can't we have legal framework which is really meeting our requirement? And now what we find in GST, there is GST law, there is GST network, which is not having synergy with the GST law. So whatever is there in the law is not synergized when we look at GST and network, and rules are going beyond the power. Why this litigation? Why 77% litigation will go up? So if you have asked me this query with a legal framework, is really conducive, really easing the business and giving the real fruits which we all are looking into. Yes, we started with the positive note. Last 4 years, challenges are on, and still we have to see. And that's the reason you got your poll out, 77% litigation will continue.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Question to Mr. Gulati, you have such vast experience in litigation, and we saw the poll, and Mr. Jain also talked about it. So what do you think in GST regime? Will the litigation go down, will reduce, will go up? What is your take on this?
So did your poll say that it will go up, or does it say go down?
77% of the respondents said it will go up.
Oh, it will go up. Okay, then I agree with the poll. See, as far as litigation is concerned, no industry member likes to litigate on its own. I think the trend of litigation depends on the complexity of the tax and behavior of the tax authorities. These are two major factors which leads to litigation. And if I see from a complexity angle, there are many things which have been achieved, like our industry panelists, Mr. Goyal and Mr. Verma have said, Sant has said, that one, the collapsing of several taxes into one tax is a big win for the industry. But has it really become one tax, one nation? I don't think so. You have one GST, you have a dual GST system, but you have compliances in several states. From a service provider point of view, if I were to see, one centralized registration has led to several registrations across states. Of course, if somebody was a trader or he was dealing in goods, he had multiple registrations, multiple compliances. Second, we must understand today that while this professes to be one nation, one tax, it is a concurrent power which has been given to the center and the states to frame legislation. At the moment, you have a GST council which is guiding all legislation, and hopefully there will be commonality. But as revenue pressures increase and going forward, and by the time you step into the second phase of this legislation, you will find pushes and pulls coming from governments. You have issues relating to what kind of provisions are being brought in today. Have we seen, my understanding, in the last 25 years, the way I have seen the behavior of tax authorities, the behavior is getting more and more aggressive. I had never seen so many arrests in tax as what I have seen in the last 3-4 years, come GST. We have had a credit system in the country for over 3-4 decades now. So, misutilization of credits or clandestine removal cases, all of this is not a new phenomenon. But the manner in which the tax authority has started behaving towards the taxpayer is becoming so difficult that I think it will not let litigation die down. Plus the manner in which the legislation is being framed. If you look at the ITC related legislation, the tax authority wants to have a go at both the service provider and the service recipient. They have remedies against both. If the law requires the service recipient to pay the tax to the vendor, how can you recover it from him? These are unfair, provisions. The manner in which the arrest provisions have been framed, the manner in which provisional attachments are taking place, where people's businesses are getting, hampered on a day-to-day basis. So what I feel is that litigation is not going to come down. It's certainly going to go up because one, the tax remains complex, although it may profess to be a one tax, one nation. Second, the behavior of the tax authorities is getting worse by the day. They're getting more aggressive, and they're getting aggressive because of the manner in which the legislation is being framed. There's very little debate happening from the SSC side, I think, where the lawmakers have to understand that if you give more and more power to the babus, it is going to make it worse for the citizens. I think that our lawmakers are not thinking it from the angle of the taxpayer and from the angle of the business, which is going to lead to litigation. The nature of litigation is going to change. So from multiplicity of taxes where you would debate whether it's service tax is applicable or VAT is applicable or entertainment tax is applicable or service tax is applicable, those kind of issues will come down. Interpretational issues, aggression related issues will go up. So that's my take on this.
Thank you so much, sir. We have heard our eminent distinguished panelists. So Puneet, what are your comments? What are the takeaways from this initial expectation round from GST?
So So DK, I fully agree with Mr. Goyal and Sant also that from a broader perspective, whether it's a single rate, and I'll also say a single legislation and neutralization of different business models, be it stock transfer, etc. It's a big achievement in GST. But yes, I think we are taking this as a big achievement because it used to be a big setback or a disadvantage in the past. So to that extent, it has come as a big relief. But I'll agree with the points which Bimalji and Tarun made, that one, uh, the law was supposed to be litigation free. And I'll be very candid with you, when GST came, I had a fear that if the law becomes so simple, then we as a practitioner will have scope of uh, practice in future, or it will also die down. But frankly, that fear has been set aside. So there's a lot of scope in future. But yeah, as a citizen of the country, the way the legislations are coming, and we'll be discussing in detail in today's session also, the legislations are poorly drafted, they are complex, and they open a lot of constitutional and otherwise interpretational disputes. I fully agree with Tarun's point that one of the expectation I had was that the approach of revenue authorities will be normal, or at least it will not be worse than what was there in the past. But it has worsened. In my view, they have got disproportionate powers to harass genuine taxpayers also. And lastly, one broader point I have is that the whole purpose of GST was that there should not be any cascading effect. In my view, that has not been eliminated. The long list of 17.5, in my view, if as a country we are not allowing credit on GST paid on construction of factory, offices, or other business related expenses, then we are not eliminating cascading effect. If we are not allowing credit of CGST on hotels in other states and those things. So in my view, GST has not been fully successful in eliminating the cascading effect.
Thank you, Puneet. So we will move on to our next topic. I mean, so once GST is there, the first step is the migration. So when we talk of migration into GST, industry has accrued taxes from the previous regime, erstwhile laws. Those need to be transitioned. But what we saw actually is that the credits got stuck because there were portal issues, because the GST law put certain restrictions, certain limitation on timing, etc., and which led to protracted litigation. So that is on insofar as the credits is concerned. Secondly, erstwhile laws also had a lot of exemptions, whether it was, EPCG scheme on capital goods, whether it was advanced authorization scheme, whether you had the excise free zones, area-based exemptions, or you had the deferment schemes under various state industrial policies. Now, all those exemptions also, because government made promise for certain period, so taxpayers were eligible for those exemptions, and those were to be carried forwarded to GST regime. When we saw the actual implementation, what government tried to do is that they did bring certain schemes to, instead of allowing the exemption, through the refund route. For instance, the budgetary support scheme is there. What is seen is that only partial exemption was allowed. For instance, budgetary support scheme has only 58% exemption, 29 central and 29 state GST. And also on most of the these exemptions were denied based on technical issues and interpretation, etc. So on this front, these two transition related issues, my question first to Mr. Verma, to you, that do you think the transition into GST regime was smooth, or was it challenging for the industry? And in your view, could the situation have been improved in any manner?
Yeah, let me put this in two buckets. One is the operational challenges, the second is the legal challenges. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, Sant, you're audible.
You are audible,
Okay.
please.
Thank you. So operationally, I think we had, since the whole GST portal was not stabilized, And I think government changed dates. They kept changing dates of implementation of couple of things also going forward. I think that was a one-time big pain. Somehow we managed in our companies in Schneider. We were able to manage because we did a lot of advanced preparation almost 1.5 years before we started ramping up our efforts and understanding and engaging with the stakeholders. So it required a lot of groundwork, and I think we were able to do that. So, but of course, pain were there. So on the operational side, I would say there were pains. Now on the interpretation of some of the provisions, especially on the credit transition and few more, I also recall that we had filed a writ petition in the which High Court I don't recall now on some of the transition matters. We had some 4 or 5 court bliss. It was all because the portal was not behaving well. So the form, there was a deadline extended, and by the due date we couldn't file the form. So that was the issue with us. Besides that, the transition of cess kitty had another set of legal challenges. Of course, I had my own thoughts around this, and I was not very optimistic in my own interpretation. Though I know some of my friends, great lawyers, they were very optimistic. They suggested me that let's do something. See what happens over a period of time when you pass through all these exciting situations. You figure out that after 10 years of journey, you get a fantastic decision, but it's worth putting in the dustbin because you can't implement it for whatever reason. Many such bad experiences I have had in my career. You fight it, spend crores, right from the tribal, high court, Supreme Court, go everywhere. At the end of the day, government would do some funny things, and you just carry that, hold that piece of paper. It means nothing to you at the end of the day. So I know at times that wisdom also prevails, that what to litigate, what not to litigate, what things you take in your stride and say, okay, let me focus on the business and not fight much. So I think that also played its own role. But as I think, if I put it in the larger perspective, that one-time pain for a few months, and then whenever major change happened, whether it is e-invoice or e-way bill and all of that, of course, there was again some pain. But if I look at it, again, very broadly, 4 years down the line, I think by and large, for industry, I see a better piece, I'm not discounting the comments that my friend Tarun has made or Bimal has made. I fully acknowledge and appreciate that. I think on the interpretation side, you have many doors open, many issues open. I think we are a country of complexity. I keep telling people that we are more than a continent, actually, not a country. If you compare yourself with the rest of the world in terms of population diversity, the way we think, the way we dispute, so many stakeholders, I think taking everybody along is not easy. And there is one more aspect which I want to highlight. India has been thriving on unorganized sector, cash economy. I recall reading an article long back, more than a decade back, where somebody said that corruption is an essential lubricant. If you suck it, the economy comes to a grinding halt. That's the reality. I think we all have experienced in our own lives. It's a reality. We don't acknowledge most of the time in many of our discussions, serious discussions, but that's the reality. Now, GST has been instrumental to some extent in tackling this cash economy. And at least I'm seeing in all my companies where there was a parallel unorganized sector going on, holding on a percentage, not paying taxes, purchases not recorded, sales not recorded, no taxes paid, no income tax paid, nothing paid. And people used to take a lot of pride that I'm doing so much of business, so much of cash I'm generating, profit I'm generating, I'm not paying any tax. I think that segment is really facing a lot of heat. I'm experiencing in the business I'm in right now, Luminous, inverter and battery. I see unorganized sector getting marginalized because they used to compete with the taxpayers, with the honest taxpayers, by evading taxes. So that delta they used to compete with us with. Now that delta is not available to most of them. So that's one part. The second part is, I'm also mindful that for lawmakers, it's a big challenge As we say now, a small fish spoils the pond. We have a bad fish. We have many bad fish in the system. That's inherently, it's part of, that's the way we are. No, we are. I think it's good to acknowledge that. If some laws are tight, if there are more powers being enjoyed, there's a simple reason, because you have still 0, 1% or whatever that percentage is. It still wants to evade completely. They don't recognize, they don't respect the law. They don't want to pay. So of course, I think all of us in the organized sector are also paying price for that, because we're part of the same system at the end of the day. So I think it's a journey. So few steps have been initiated. I think more we go to formal economy, I hope that the things would be better. And the other last piece is, I think, again, on the implementation and on the teething troubles, the knowledge and the training of tax officials. I think my experience tells me that they don't bother for the initial 5 years. Their catch-up time is usually 5 to 6, 7 years. By that time, they will create havoc. You fight in courts. It doesn't matter to them, because it's not impacting their KRA, their progress report, APR, etc., etc., etc. On the other hand, more cases they create, I think the more accolades they get. I think this is again a fault in the system. How do we correct it? I think many things have been written about this. SHOM committee made many recommendations at that point in time, including on this subject. But again, it's a journey. So I think reskilling, training of tax officials is very, very important. So I conclude with this. Thank you.
Very enlightening. Thank you for your comments. Okay, so my question to Goyal Saab is that we saw that there were some restrictions and limitations put on the transitional credit, and the erstwhile exemptions also face some challenges. In your opinion, has the government been fair on this front, and whether these credits ought to have been allowed because these were vested right, or you think the restrictions were valid? And second, the exemptions also should have been done away with. What is your take on this?
Mr. Rana, okay, on the transition, let me mention 3-4 points. First good point was the officers, a set of officers who were in charge of implementation. They did listen to most of us, and what the draft law was released vis-a-vis the actual law, they did consider a few critical points and also came out with a solution what was discussed. Like if I give an example again of auto industry, always there's a significant inventory which has been cleared by the manufacturer but not yet retailed by the dealer. So when the dealer from 1st July 17 were to sell, they were supposed to pay, let us say, full 28% GST on sales side. But input credit to them was 0. They have purchased against a C form, and excise input credit was not available to them. During the discussion, they agreed and came out with a unique solution, what we call credit transfer documents. That's all. Otherwise, the auto industry dealers would have got killed, though nobody had a margin of 28%. Margin is 1%, 2%. So that initial, to me, otherwise that would have been a death blow to GST. The industry would have died. Another small relaxation or the positive movement, what they came out was on sale of capitalized own used vehicles with the corporates. Because as for the initial law, if you sell on the sale price, you were supposed to pay the tax. Whereas again, motor vehicle, there was no input credit available. They listen to industry and then they say, okay, if your sale price is more than your WDV, only on the differential tax would be payable. So these are the two examples where the transition obstacle or issue has been resolved. But to me, two issues is still pending, and in spite of lot of suggestions, requests from the industry side, government has not come out. Rightly remember, there was a provision what we call like a 57E. If there is any revision in the tax due to interpretation issue or price revision, or like you said, EPCG, on a transaction which has taken place, but there is a subsequent tax payment, and there is no allegation of a fraud or suppression, input credit of the subsequent payment was always allowed. But now, because we have moved from the excise to GST, there is no clarity what happens to the taxes which has to be paid as an excise or like under EPCG, the CVD, whether input credit will be available. You made a genuine business projection, okay, you will export this much. The business cannot be predicted, like COVID. Suppose you're not able to export, naturally you will pay the differential customs along with CVD, but whether CVD credit would be available or not. So this, whereas to me it's very unfair as a part of the state or as a part of the, I would say, lawmakers to cheat the, to me, I'm using the word cheat. You believed on the government, law changes, but whatever was promised must be done. Now, the last point you said on exemptions, by and large, they have taken care, but the who were enjoying the tax-free zones or like new, I would say, industries, there were some state incentives. Those incentives have been partially honored, partially that amount has also vanished. Anybody, suppose, has made a business plan, made an investment, having the faith on the government, and the government doesn't honor that faith. I can understand the legal advocates and all may say there is no estoppel against the law, but there must be, to me, a fairness. The last point which I would like to say, which Mr. Sant Kumar also said, at least I firmly believe, and I hope I or we as a company also practice, that we should, as a citizen or as an employee or as a taxpayer, should never try to get benefit out of a genuine omission, error, mistake, either of a tax officer or even legislation. We must understand the overall scheme of the things. Because any tax, any law, there's a basic policy, government policy, how the tax would be charged, on which amount tax is payable, on which amount input credit are available, on which amount of concession is available. If the legislature has made a mistake and not I would say, anticipated some particular business transaction, and we should not try to take benefit out of this. Same way, sometimes officers also, because of ignorance of fact or because of improper communication, give you some specific permission. At least I firmly believe we should never take a benefit out of that. Because if we try to take a benefit and the courts may interpret based on the wordings of the law, then subsequently result into retrospective amendments. So we as a mature citizen, if we feel the law is not properly drafted, it may lead to unintended benefit. Better go to the government, come out to the point. If the government has a very specific policy that, okay, it's there. Just for the audience, let me give a small point, although not relating to direct tax. Sorry, not relating to indirect tax, on direct tax, whether the cessage like health cess and all, is it an income tax? Is it deductible as an expenditure? Some court has taken a view, no, this is not a tax, it's a business expenditure. But I don't find that is in line with the overall scheme of income tax. So to repeat, we as a citizen should also behave in a responsible way and not take benefit out of any genuine mistake of either lawmaker or of a tax officer. Thank you.
Sir. So now I'll come to Jain Saab, you. So, you know, we just discussed the difficulties, teething issues insofar as transition of credits and exemptions. What, in your view, what changes in law could have resolved these anomalies?
Let me first compliment my both industry expert, Mr. Sant and Mr. Goyal. They were so generous. They were saying that we must look at the law and try to comply with the law. And I'm also saying that we have to look at the law and comply with the law. But look at the proposition you wanted me to suggest what could have been done so that this litigation could have been avoided. The first and foremost, for transitional credit, all attendees are watching this program. Is it not my vested right, first of all, which I'm carry forwarding from pre-GST to GST regime? It is my vested right. Second, if Tran 1 I could not file on GST and network common portal because common portal was not up, there were technical glitches. Who was at fault? Is it a taxpayer or tax department? You have made the law, and as per the law, there is no date prescribed. Now, rule is saying, rule 117 is saying last date would be 27 December 2017, and your common portal is not ready, having technical glitches. Why litigation got started? I'm not saying that we must take the advantage of some lacuna in the law, but I'm saying that if that machinery provision which is not available before the taxpayer, where he will go? Technical glitches, he has gone to grievance redressal committee. Lot of attendees can give their input. Did they get any kind of redressal done of their grievances? Not at all. And why two different high court giving two different judgment? Delhi High Court in the case of brand equity, they are saying rule 117 is a directory in nature, cannot be enforced on the taxpayer. But you cannot forfeit the vested right of a taxpayer, but it cannot go in perpetuity. So as per the residue clause of Limitation Act, 3 years time period must be given. And then when these kind of judgment comes in, you change the law with a retrospective date. I'm just saying that why this change happened only when judgment comes out? If at all there's a lacuna in the law, then the lawmakers should have done it irrespective of fact whether judgment has come or not come. Once judgment comes out, they come and do the retrospective amendment, then in the time and manner as prescribed. Section 140 on 16th May 2020, but retrospective date. I'm only pinpointing here, and Bombay High Court, NALCO Limited. What were the conclusion of Bombay High Court that rule 117 does not ultra vast? They have only said since taxpayer has not attempted to file on or before 27 December 2017, he will not be given the benefit. My point is that this technical glitches for transitional credit was multifold. They were the taxpayer who did not try at all. They were the taxpayer, they tried but could not do anything at all. They were the taxpayer, they filed but they have filed wrongly. We have to really understand when we are moving from that pre-GST to GST, we have envisaged good and simple tax. Government has given promise to the taxpayer, it is going to be good and simple for all of us together. My vested rights should not go away just because of procedural lapses, should not go away with the system which is not made available. And that GSTN does not talk the language, that GSTN is not ready. How you can penalize that poor taxpayer not to get his vested right? This was on transitional credit. What government should have done from my side, instead of retrospective amendment, looking at the judgment coming from Delhi High Court and other High Court, they could have come out with a policy. And what is the policy? Since it is vested right of a taxpayer, let it allowed and give one last time opportunity and make sure your GST and common portal is upright to take the form forward. So they could have done it. Who had stopped them not to do it? So this was the first part. Coming to the exemption. When I'm investing money, like Uttaranchal, I'm being promised certain benefit of central excise. GST coming in, known to the department, known to the government that we have promised particular benefit to the taxpayer on the basis of investment. If that commensurating benefit will go away just because new taxation system coming in, is it not giving uncertainty? They were the objective. Why GST got introduced? You have just shown the poll. It was for the certainty Where is certainty now? EPCG, advanced license. These were all prevalent pre-GST. And we were all knowing that this will continue even post-GST. Maybe they could have taken some transition time period, which is called handholding. I'm not, if you ask from me whether exemption should continue in GST, I'm of the opinion no. Exemption should not continue, because exemption create blockage in supply chain. Not correct. But at the same time, when we were following certain things in pre-GST and move into GST, and with no handholding, no transition, just ad hoc basis, you can't say I will not give you this benefit, or this benefit is being withdrawn. That is not calling as a handholding for the smooth ease of business. So what could have been done? If it is answer from my side, comments should have come, like CVD component on non-export obligation. Export obligation is not met out. With a credit available in GST regime, COVID-19, we are not in a position to meet out our export obligation. Am I supposed to pay CVD on EPCG license, if at all payable, with a credit available or not? Or is it going to create cascading? Who is stopping to the government not to consider our request and come out with a clarity what trade is looking into? But I must compliment both industry experts, vouch for the positivity. I'm not saying negative. I'm only saying because the question you posted to me, what could have been done? So I'm in such a position, I have to say these kind of aspects. So I'm not contrary to my industry expert, but they should have done, means government should have. And still as a way forward, last concluding point. Why only transition and exemption we are referring to? There are not many issues where government can really immediately come and react as a proactive, not as a reactive with retrospective amendment to done away Calcutta Club judgment. That should not be the way. That is the way we cannot make GST good and simple tax. If at all we want to enjoy July 1 GST day, let's promise as a taxpayer and as a tax department, we both will come together and see success of GST.
Thank you, sir. So Puneet, over to you, your comments and takeaways from this.
Yeah. So DK, my broader comments are that I agree with Sant to a great extent that this cash economy has reduced, but I still believe that it has not fully reduced. We still see a lot of these ITC, fake credits, all these scams. So government has not been fully successful in that. Two, on the transition credits, there have been operational issues. There are thousands of cases which were filed before different high courts. High courts taking contrary view. Many cases went to Supreme Court. Even Supreme Court affirming both type of contrary views. So there is utter confusion. I still feel that there are thousands of people who would have lost these credits also because of either materiality or not going into litigation. So I fully agree with Bimalji's that either they open the portal now or bring some one-time amnesty scheme to allow old credits. Otherwise, I feel that this transitional credits matter will go at least till 20 years before Supreme Court takes a final call, and hopefully government does not bring out with some retrospective amendment to undo the Supreme Court ruling. Even on the area-based or state incentives, etc., yes, the government has partially compensated, which is very, very unfair and totally against doctrine of promissory estoppel. And yes, the point which Sant made of knowledge of officials, in my view, that's a big teething issue. And now when the departmental audits and assessments are going on, the taxpayers are facing that. So yes, for them it's easy that you learn on the job, etc. But yeah, it's the taxpayers who face the brunt.
Sure, that takes us to our next this thing. So this one's for you, Mr. Gulati. When GST law was introduced, for the first time we saw a provision of anti-profiteering, which required a supplier to commensurately reduce its price of goods or services and pass the benefit to recipient on account of reduction in rate of tax or benefit of ITC. Now, the profiteering element was to be determined by National Anti-Profiteering Authority. And, we have seen all the progress too in the past 4 years, what has happened. Recently, we had the reduction in rate relating to COVID products. So even that has been referred to the authority to look into as to whether there is any profiteering being done within the GST regime by the, the taxpayers. So my question to you is this anti-profiteering law constitutionally valid? And what are the major challenges in this law in your view? I mean, it's a big issue, but try to keep it as because otherwise we'll run out of time. So
We are already.
over to
I
you.
think we are already out of time.
No, I know. We'll continue. We want this discussion. We will not. We'll continue. Don't worry. But over to you.
The only thing is I have to get into court at 1, so I will probably have to excuse myself after this. But yes. Let's understand this whole, you're right to say that this discussion on anti-profiteering will at least take an hour if it has to be a proper discussion. But let me, make 4-5 broad points on this. First of all, I always say this is a copycat provision. We haven't thought through this when we brought this in. Because if you see the provision itself is blissfully silent on detail as to what exactly was intended. Is this a tax provision at all? Or is this getting into the realm of price control? That where are we leading this to? We very well know what are the ingredients of a charging provision in a tax law. There should be a tax, there should be a value, there should be a rate. This is not a taxing provision. This is some kind of pricing authority which they have created, which is now disgorging excess profits. Disgorgement is, something which is there under the SEBI Act or something, and there are specific statutory authorizations for something like this because it's confiscatory in nature. Section doesn't say that you can do this. Section only says that there should be a commensurate reduction in prices. That's all. Who decides prices? Does tax decide price? Is tax the only factor which, and I can understand if you are making a sale, price plus tax, then anyway, whatever is the tax, you will charge from your customers, no question of that. But can the authority get into the fact that what ought to be your price? Can the authority get into what ought to be your cost? Or if you want to increase your profit margin, is there a defined IRR for industries at large? When products are not even essential commodities, they are not under price control. By means of a taxing statute, can you at all do this? Answer is in the gray. I think, to my mind, it's completely unconstitutional for several reasons. This one, of course, that it doesn't satisfy the ingredients of a charge. It doesn't authorize confiscation like what the authority is doing. It doesn't authorize price control. There are no concepts provided under the law like base price, what they are tom-tomming in every order. There's nothing statutory about it. There is no period of investigation defined. They are going on for years together to say that you have to maintain a price. They have no jurisdiction to do that. There is no computational mechanism in the law. There is no judicial review of this. There is no judicial member. There is no judicial review. There are so many open areas here. They started levying penalties. Then we slammed back at them to say that, how are you levying penalties? Then they've cut back to say, yes, we didn't have a power to levy penalties. They've dropped those notices. Now a provision has been brought in to levy penalties. So I think there are so many open issues on this area that I hope the court strikes it down. It's completely, according to me, a draconian provision, not well thought through, and shouldn't have ever been part of the tax law. I can understand essential commodities. I can understand something like COVID items, which may be part of a price control mechanism which is put in place according to law. But you cannot make a backdoor entry into the boardroom of a company in a free market economy where people are free to price their goods merely because tax rate has gone down. Ultimately, what is our principle? That principles of demand and supply should decide price. If I am a manufacturer of Maruti and who Hyundai is my competitor. I am not free to price my vehicle at any price I want, irrespective of tax, because the competition will take advantage. Ultimately, the competitive forces will make the price ambient. That's the principle that a market economy works on. You cannot ask a tax authority to determine that, to say, I reduced 5% tax, your price has to be maintained below your existing price to the extent of 5% for times to come. It's a completely abhorrent concept, according to me. That's my short view on this. I know time is short. Sant,
Thank
want
you.
to say something?
Yeah, thank you.
I'll just make a quick comment. I think the last two lines, what Tarun mentioned is the key. See, pricing is hardcore business. Our tax friends do not understand business. That's the reason they mess up on the implementation of law. Now, this is hardcore business. Pricing is hardcore business. It's nobody's baby. I completely agree with, I think on the legal side also, I agree with Tarun. They are not competent. There is no yardstick. If I come back and say GST has reduced my profitability, who is going to compensate me for that? If I make a counter argument, So I think this is not the area they should have got into in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. So Puneet, your concluding remarks or any comments from your end?
So DK, nothing specific. I fully agree with Tarun that it was totally unwarranted. And again, we are going into unwanted territory and disputes only. I think in paucity of time, DK, we can move to the next or last topic. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So
may I excuse myself? I'm really sorry for this, but I have to get into court now at 1.
Thank you so much, Tarun.
No, sure, Tarun. And thank you very much for making it. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Tarun. Thank you for your time and enlightening everyone of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Tarun.
Okay, so we move on to our next section, which is the reality. Okay, we have migrated now. What we see is that GST, as we saw, is a work in progress. How it is a work in progress? There are multiple amendments in law, rules, forms. There have been multiple GST council meetings, clarifications, notifications, some retrospective amendments. So if I were to give you some statistics, there have been 43 GST council meetings till date. Under central tax and integrated tax, I'm not including state taxes, there are 618 notifications issued, 160 circulars issued. So with this kind of system, in 4 years we have seen this, and then we have seen that return forms getting changed. We have seen portal issues continue to haunt, and the objective behind digitization, because IT is the information technology is the backbone for a robust implementation of GST, and then we see the portal issues. So how in such a manner, I mean, it appears clearly that this is a work in progress. Even courts have been blunt in this. They have said that this is, trial and error approach of the government. So second aspect on this is we did touch upon it, the aggressive approach in which the officers have been doing. So we have seen ITC getting blocked, I mean the electronic credit ledger getting blocked, attachment of property, including bank accounts, suspension and cancellation of registrations. And in most cases, what has been noticed is that due process is not followed. The reasons behind these actions are not disclosed to the taxpayer. Natural justice is in most cases violated. And there is adverse impact on the bona fide businesses. So I can understand somebody who is a fraud or a cheat, that's a different matter altogether. We discuss about arrests, etc. But what about bona fide businesses? So in such case, my question to you, Mr. Goyal, is that do you find the implementation and compliances under GST to be convenient, given the the multitude of amendments, etc., and the changes in the law or new rulings, some of which are contrary also? Then how do you as a business, you think that this implementation and compliance is easy for you, or do you find it very difficult?
Okay, I would say the system what they have released, they have gone into too ambitious way. and in actual implementation, they could not do. Like the 3B which came was introduced as a temporary solution. They were not able to develop the complete system, and because of that, they have gone into such a difficult period. If I would say, like suppose somebody is a habitual of a too I would say difficult type of food or fried food, and you are asking him to move to boiled vegetable, that type of thing is not possible. You have to gradually move. So if the government would have started tracking, let us say on the invoice, just GST and number of both parties, invoice number, date, and total amount, it would have been much easier than asking to upload each and every line, and then you're trying to match whether you put a correct HSN code and all those type of things. And because of that, they are not able to develop. Naturally, in society, we have all type of people, some leakage, and to plug that leakage, government being that one, they treat everybody with the same harassed approach. So that's the one, this one. Second, what is another big disappointment? That all the tax law is same, and they also came out that there will be a single jurisdiction. That okay, even they will divide all the SSEs between some assigned to state authorities, some assigned to the central authorities. But in practice, it has not changed. You are answerable to both, and both doesn't talk to each other. So same investigation would be done by both. Same queries will come from the both. As if you are a child of a two quarreling parents, and we become the in-between. So as far as the tax administration is concerned, our expectations were much higher than what is present today. With that, I will conclude my remarks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So my next question to you, Mr. Verma, is that do you feel that the powers under GST are disproportionately exercised by the officers, given the aggressive approach that they have been adopting?
I would say yes. And I think, no, there is again, they have their own training, you know. With the onset of GST, people have not changed. And they refuse to get retrained on certain aspects. I think that's a big challenge. It's one of the big challenges. There's also a related aspect is the trust deficit continues. You know, we had maybe more touch points for the trust deficit. We have lesser touch point now, but it continues. So that's, in my view, is another big reason. I think this, Mr. Goyal mentioned about the over enthusiasm. It's also, I think, partly coupled with the urge to control, urge to exercise control. I don't know, you also see that manifestation in the overall approach. I don't have an answer. How do we handle this? Honestly speaking, but it is there.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Puneet, anything from your end? You feel there is anything?
Yeah, so I think first time we are hearing from industry panelists some concerns. So yes, the implementation of laws have been really poor, leading to interpretational disputes and otherwise litigations also. And yes, as I discussed earlier, also the approach of revenue officials has been highly aggressive, and they are not discriminating between genuine or fraudulent taxpayers. So, which is causing a lot of issues at ground level. So to that extent, in my view, the whole purpose of this being a simple law or a litigation-free law actually fails. Yeah.
And I think there was a concept of grading of taxpayers on a scale of whatever 5.
Right.
The honest, diligent, and
yeah. There was a rating system which is part of the legislation also. Yeah.
We got to put that in place. I think that's very, very important.
Yeah.
so that you're able to focus where you have got to focus and you leave the
Right,
rest
right.
to do the business.
Right.
Okay, so this brings us to our next poll result. So we had a question that we had put out. Do you feel the advanced ruling mechanism under GST regime bring in certainty and transparency? Now, this has linkage with our next round, next segment. So on this question, 23% of the respondents, they said that generally, yes, it does bring in certainty and transparency. 5% were not sure, but a large number, 72%, almost 3/4 of the respondents felt that GST, the advanced ruling mechanism, does not bring in certainty and transparency. So with that, we start with our next segment, which is relates to the constitutional challenges and contrary rulings under GST law. So what we saw is that there is some lack of clarity on various aspects, and therefore the advanced ruling authority was flooded with the rulings, some of which came contrary. Appellate advanced ruling authority is there. Then we have High Court and Supreme Court, and a number of provisions are under challenge. So, for instance, the conditions of availing input tax credit, Section 16(2) is under challenge. Section 17(5), which restricts the availment of credit, that is under challenge, particularly as Puneet also mentioned on construction works contracts, etc. Then the constitution of advanced ruling authority, appellate authority, and GST appellate tribunal, those constitution are under challenge. Then whether IGST liability on ocean freight on importer under reverse charge mechanism when the imports are on CIF basis, those are under. So there are multiple. I'm just giving a few examples. Just there are multiple challenges under constitutional law. And just to give a statistics, till date we have had 42 orders from Supreme Court, 1121 orders from various high courts. Appellate authority has ruled on 224 matters. Advanced ruling authority in 1179 matters, and anti-profiteering in 202 matters. So with this background, my question is to Mr. Jain, to you, on 2 points. One is that one is how should industry prepare themselves to face the consequences, because the result comes out much later, and then you realize you can't go back in time. And I think this is the point Mr. Goyal also said, that you can't go back in time and take those credits or whatever consequences are. How do you so the question is that whatever contrary rulings come or anything come, how should industry gear up? Second question, related question to this, is that in your view, what policy or legislative changes should be brought in which can overcome these contrary rulings and which can bring in certainty and reduce these constitutional challenges? So this is the question to you.
Bimalji, you are on mute.
Yeah. You got 72%. Those who are saying we are getting contradictory judgment from advanced ruling, but as per my information, 90% and above, it is pro revenue and contrary. 90% and above, I'm telling you. And even we are having problem of judgment coming from one state advanced ruling contrary to other state advanced ruling authority. How industry should prepare? Sometimes looks like going and asking advanced ruling to decide, to me looks like a challenge, because it is applicable to the appellant. For others, it carries the persuasive value. I can just take 1 or 2 examples and take all attendees, and my 2 industry experts are sitting. They can also voice after my point. CSR expenses, corporate social responsibility. It is legally obligated. Legally obligated. When something legally obligated and it is required for the continuation of my economic operation and business, why credit should not be available on input and input services. We got two contrary advanced ruling from Kerala advanced ruling in Precap. Credit is not available. We got favorable advanced ruling from UP, Dwarikesh Sugar. Credit is available. As an industry, what should I look at? I should look at the law from where what is being written in the law. If I look at CSR expense, just I'm giving an example to all of you. It is legally obligated, statutorily required to be incurred in the course of furtherance of business. Why I will go back and check out? But what is the contrary view coming out? It is falling under section 17, subsection 5, clause H. Gift. Is it gift? Gift is voluntarily. It is not obligated on me. Why should I go back to advanced ruling and check it out whether credit available or not? But when divergent rulings comes out, then this is the responsibility of CBIC. Directors remuneration RCM. Two state giving two contrary ruling. And we know if it is salary and the employment contract, it is falling under Schedule 3. Neither a supply of goods nor supply of services. What should have been done? And just to take it further, sales promotion. Advanced ruling coming out. I'm a company, manufacturing company, and I promised to my distributor and dealer, I will give you gold coin once you achieve this target. Once you achieve this target, meaning thereby I'm penetrating, pushing my distributor and dealer to achieve the target for the sales promotion in the course of furtherance of business. If gold coin given to him, is it a gift? No, it is legally obligated. I need to give because I promised to my distributor and dealer, once you achieve this target, I will give it to you. Contrary rulings are coming out. Industry to prepare. My advice, in my humble opinion, when we all are sure that law is like this and proposition, as per the law allowing me to have credit, we should not go to the advanced ruling authority. First of all, they are from department, 90% pro revenue. And once you go, then you have to follow that provision because it is applicable to you. But these are going contrary. Now, in a given situation, it is being stated by GST Council, they are going to form National Appellate Advanced Ruling Authority when two different state are giving two divergent judgment. Where is that formation? Why it is pending? Why it is not being formed? We require something on a faster note to done away the litigation, dispute in the law. So my only humble submission for the industry preparation would be, at the moment, it is highly advisable in-house, like Mr. Sant was saying that he was having a number of good resources within his team working for that GST law implementation. Even as on date, I'm of the view, we must read the law from our bare eye and see what is the interpretation coming out. Do not go to the advanced ruling authority till the time you feel like that you're not getting clarity. But as I said, 90% pro revenue and not decided properly on the interpretation of law, then for the time being, we have to see the formation of advanced ruling. Both are technical members. There is no judicial person. Why such kind of formation for which we are demanding for a long time is not being heard of? So maybe from my side, industry need to wait and watch and go only when it is urgent necessity for them. My industry expert like Mr. Sant and Goyal ji can add further on this point.
Can I make a comment?
Please, please, please.
See, that's the beauty. As you scratch the surface, it gets hotter. So we're not discussing overview of GST anymore. And I completely agree with Bimal on this topic. I see whether it was pre-GST or post-GST. I was never a proponent of advanced ruling. I think it was one rare case I would have tried in Schneider because that was a necessity. Otherwise, I never tried. My philosophy has been that I know what we are doing. Our interpretation is reasonably good. Let department figure it out. If are unhappy, we will deal with that at a later stage. So that's the philosophy I have been following. Now, with GST expectation, if you ask me the framework, the first thing I am not comfortable with the framework. The quality of first level officer who adjudicate on advanced ruling. Is that a good framework? Answer is no. At the state level, if you get the VAT level, the VAT regime had a framework. That same framework they have kind of implemented now. It's very risky. And so that framework itself, in my views, is faulty. And this would lead to 90% dissatisfaction. I completely agree with Bimal on that also. I think we need to escalate this framework, get some experts at advanced ruling stage, even at the first stage itself. And I think Bimal has taken example of 1 or 2 rulings. I recall 1 or 2 more. There was a Colombia issue on the employee working for him under employment. Nonsense. Anything. In fact, these are all laughable cases, if you ask me honestly. But and there were a few more. I think there were a few more contradictory on the works contract also, which is defined as service, under the new regime. So I think it's very tricky, and this to me is one of the big gray area, and we need to do something at the legislation level, in my views. Thank you.
So, Puneet, your comments, takeaways from this?
Yeah, so I fully agree with Bimalji that this whole composition of advanced ruling is faulty. There are no judicial members. They were planning for a central advanced ruling appellate tribunal a couple of years back, which has not been implemented. And coupled with, we have poorly drafted legislations and the officers are untrained. So advanced ruling is never a preference which we also suggest taxpayer to go. But the problem which comes up is that even if you're not going, your competitor or some other company is going on the same issue and he gets an advanced ruling, then it creates problem for others as well. And the worst part, and which I feel which government should be doing, is that whatever issues are coming from advanced ruling, at least whether those rulings are correct or not, government should issue a clarification or make a proper amendment to take care of those. So at least government stand, because number of times they have issued circulars or made amendments contrary to advanced rulings also. So at least the government stand is clear that that's what they wanted. Right now, there's absolute pin drop silence from government's end also, so which leads to taxpayers in confusion.
Thank you, Puneet.
Yeah.
So this
DK, I think we can now quickly wind up. Yeah.
Yes. Last segment is the road ahead. So now, Puneet, we'll just simply ask one suggestion from each of our panelists as to what they think is their suggestion for the road ahead for the future. Very quickly, I mean, we can start with maybe Mr. Goyal, if you can start, then yeah.
Okay. Although there are many pending suggestions, but I would say, like for advanced ruling, that there be a time limit, let us say 3 months. The decision must come within 3 months. If it's not coming, there should be an option that treat as a withdrawn. Secondly, the automatic credit inflow, like 26 AS, that must be implemented immediately. I think other was on unjust anti-profit or anti-profiting, but that's a very heated topic, maybe sometime, some other time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Verma, how about yours?
I think we touched upon these topics, so too quick. I think anti-profiteering, we should knock it off. It doesn't have a place. And second, revamping of advanced ruling. It's not going to serve. It's actually a disservice what is happening right now.
Great, thank you, sir. Mr. Jain, from your end.
Soul of any person must survive. GST credit, input tax credit. Why should be cascading? Why there would be negative list? That was not the object we have introduced GST in the country. They must look at bottleneck cascading effect, which is coming out on construction, negative list under section 17, subsection 5. a lot of debate and litigation on section 16 subsection 2. That should be simplified.
Thank you. Puneet, your concluding remarks, and then we can proceed with the book launch.
Yeah. So DK, in my view, the government should have an overhaul of whole GST law. So whatever drafting issues are there, or disputes from advanced rulings, etc., which are coming up, so they should set right those. Yeah. We can move to the next slide. Yeah. So we are happy to launch a book today, which is Jurisprudence under GST Law. We are launching this book in association with Bloomsbury, India's leading publisher on tax, accounting, and law issues. And it will be available both in hard and e-format. So the objective behind writing this book was that, as Dharnendra also indicated, a lot of statistics that from GST Appellate Authority till Supreme Court level, so many rulings have come up. So we have read and analyzed all the rulings till March 2021, put it in a chapter form, and indexed it, and given our expert comments also on correctness or incorrectness of those rulings. And this will be our first edition, and we target to launch an edition every year. So in July 2022, we'll come up with the updated version for rulings till March 2022. And we are indeed grateful to Tarun. He has written a foreword for this book. He is not presently here. So the book is in the process of publishing. So in the month of July, it will be available in the market. So a very short 1-minute video on that. Yeah.
Very good, Puneet. Many congratulations to you and team.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sant.
It's a good service to the tax fraternity.
Yeah, thank you. We thought that similar book is not available relating to rulings. So we used actually time in the second COVID wave to write a book itself.
It's going to be very, very useful.
Yeah, thank you.
Puneet, congratulations. Really very unique initiative. It will be very useful for all citizens and SSEs both.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Heartiest congratulations, Puneet and team
Yeah.
Nitya, for this lovely book. And
Yeah.
definitely, I'm sure we will have much more value addition.
Thank you, Bimal ji. So with this, we'll wrap up our session, and our sincere thanks to Mr. D.D. Goyal, Sant and Bimal ji for taking time and enlightening all our participants with their thoughts. So you have set a good tone for our whole event, and we have got a very good macro perspective from an industry and tax practitioners fraternity that how GST is evolving, and for sure it's not 100% a good and simple tax.
Thank you so much, Puneet and DK.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks
you
for
so
your
much, sir.
invitation, and thank you for the to the co-panelists also. I think it's a treat to hear all of them. For me, it was a good gap to listen about tax. It's a good brushing up. Thank you so much, and all the best for the coming days. And I also kind of encourage all the participants to take the best out of these sessions in the coming days.
Thank you very much, Sant. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
I'll take leave.
Thank you. I will also take the leave. Puneet and the
Thank you, sir.
panelists, thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Puneet and Dharendra and team Nitya, and my co-panelists, Mr. Sant and C. Goyal ji. And thanks all attendees for joining today. And I'm sure the 4 days program which Puneet and team has organized, it is going to help us to understand GST and way forward of GST from July 1, 2021.
Thank you very much, Bimal.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you, sir. Bye.